Video games have always been inspiring to me. As a kid, I often found myself heavily, deeply engaged in the games that I played, with many of my waking hours spent poured into stuff like Mario and Sonic. There were many reasons for that: their style, their gameplay, and the challenge they offered, the variety of locations they had in store, and the beautiful music. All of these things came together to create experiences that, for me, resonated and inspired me. Made me imagine these worlds and these games and what lay beyond their foundations. Also, to be frank, I imagined myself in these worlds, how I'd interact, how I'd beat the villains and be the hero myself. Keep in mind I was like 6 years old. Games, even back then, inspired me to start writing my own silly little stories too. Those stories, mind, are now lost to time. I was 6 years old when I made them, but the point stands. They stuck with me, these games. They inspired me. From what I experienced, I was inspired from these games enough that I created something new. And it didn't stop there with just Mario and Sonic. In around 2009 or so, I would be introduced to a game series that has stuck with me for the longest of times. Made its mark on me so deeply that I never stopped thinking about it, with it becoming such a powerful influence in my life that it inspired me to keep creating, keep dreaming, becoming the artist that I am today. For long-time viewers of my channel, you know what that series is, but for everyone else, it was TimeSplitters. Where do I begin? The games, created by veteran Rareware devs who went off to found their own game studio, Free Radical Design, the TimeSplitters games were the next step in progressing beyond the foundation that GoldenEye and Perfect Dark had created. Set to the theme of travelling back in time to prevent the evil aliens known as the TimeSplitters from wrecking the course of human history, the games were well beloved by players, mainly well regarded by critics, and these games are my absolute favourites of all time. From the moment I set my eyes on the box art of TimeSplitters 2 as a kid, so unprepared and unaware of what was contained inside that disc, I was absolutely smitten, because it was completely different from what I'd experienced before. High-paced first-person shooter gameplay with an insane arsenal of weapons ranging from pistols, explosives, a brick, a monkey gun, don't ask, and fucking miniguns you can dual-wield. A wide variety in character design ranging from military grunts, robots, monkeys, a literal skeleton cowboy, aliens, a shoal of fish, zombies, and killer clowns. A genuinely staggering variety of different game modes and maps to play on. A custom level maker, a story mode that evolved as the series did, and an absolutely electric soundtrack, courtesy of the great musicians over at Free Radical. Everything about TimeSplitters was about shoving chaos into your face and being as archaic as possible, and having fun while doing it. And I fell in love. It was so uniquely itself, so unafraid to be itself, and it spoke to me. As a kid who felt so unsure and felt like an outlier amongst other people, it spoke to me in that regard. It was unafraid to be what it was. It was a game made for me in that regard. And they inspired me so much, these games, with my pre-pixel art self drawing the characters and my own original characters, and my creativity in general being unleashed thanks to the game's tendencies to be so open to interpretation, alongside having so many creative ideas. But all good things have their inevitable curve into a decline, it's just natural, and the series is no stranger to it. After a bit of a botched attempt to get TimeSplitters 4 made, Free Radical collapsed due to a variety of issues plaguing the company, with its assets being absorbed into Crytek UK, a splinter of Crytek in 2009, and the rights belonging to them at the time. The series was, well, to be frank, dead. But fans didn't take well to the death of the series, something only exacerbated by then Crytek CEO Sivat Yearly's comments on the matter. The thing is with TimeSplitters is, if we made a sequel to TimeSplitters, nobody would accept this apart from some fans, and we don't know how big the fan community is, unfortunately. Little did he know that such a comment would have a powerful butterfly effect. In response, Daniel Wesley, an avid fan of the series, launched 100,000 Strong for TimeSplitters 4, a Facebook page essentially designed to prove Sivat Yearly's comment wrong. What would follow would be the growth of the Facebook page, the announcement and development of an Unreal Tournament 2004 mod that took centre stage, the cancellation of said mod, and ultimately the blessing of Crytek to allow a group of fans to create a new TimeSplitters game, centered around being a HD version of the 3 existing ones. A TimeSplitters game made by the fans, for the fans. A series resurrected by the passion of hobbyists with the blessing of the then IP owner. A project that would come to be known as TimeSplitters Rewind. And 12 years later, it's finally here. After 12 long years, TimeSplitters Rewind will be released in less than 2 or so weeks as of this video's making. And I want to talk about it. I want to talk about my experience being a fan of these games, watching as I've lived throughout history, seeing this project evolve from its earliest roots, what it means to be seeing this game finally come to fruition after so many long years, and generally reflect by talking about my history, not only with Rewind, but how I got to this point in the first place. So much time has passed, so join me as I look back on what exactly this project, as a TimeSplitters fan, means to me. There's a lot that I want to say. In a previous video, I've said that the passage of time is a funny little thing. I still stand by that statement, actually. Sometimes there are days wherein I look back at years past and realise, Jesus Christ, how long has it been since then? In relation to some kind of topic. And while for that previous video it was in relation to Deltarune, another game that I particularly enjoy and is important to me, in this case it's especially prominent for TimeSplitters. From that fateful day when I got a copy of TimeSplitters 2 back in 2009 or so to this year in 2025, where the series is primarily dead from 2 cancelled TimeSplitters 4 games across the past 2 decades, and Rewind is finally releasing after 12 years in development. So much time has passed, and in all of it, I've evolved and changed as a human being. It's weird to think about in a way that the series has been present throughout my lifespan in that regard, and will continue to be, too. In that sense, the series has always been interlinked with who I am as a person. I've followed the series as much as the games and Rewind have followed me throughout my life. Rewind resonates with me a lot for that reason, and with it I begin to reflect on it and how I've got to the point that I'm at now. That in 2025, TimeSplitters Rewind releases after 12 years of development, and my name is within the credits as a QA tester for the fan project I've followed since, God, all the way back in 2012. Deep down inside, a version of myself from my younger years has lived long enough to see another TimeSplitters game exist within his lifetime. It means everything to me, really, to see Rewind finally real, tangible, and it reminds me of the journey I've had to get to this point, my own personal story. My story with the series begins in 2009. 1 year before, on a cold, frosty December day, I got a PS2 on my birthday in 2008. And over the next year, what started as a small collection of games turned into shelves upon shelves stacked with new experiences. Very quickly, I became used to the idea of going to shops, game stores, anywhere that sold discs of any kind, just to try and find more games for my console. My dad, realising that I was smitten with my PlayStation 2, had begun to search charity shops for games for me, with him coming back with something interesting every Thursday to give to me. On one fateful Thursday, after a long school day in the early autumn, I was greeted with a game that I had never seen before that immediately just struck me as interesting, a used copy of TimeSplitters 2. I was deeply curious about the game, with its cover art just capturing my attention. I don't know what it was exactly, but it just tantalised me, especially the back of the case, with the whole outnumbered but never outgunned shtick going on. It was kinda cool. It was so unusual, so different from what I was used to, and it caught my eye. After eating my tea, which I think was spaghetti bolognese, I scampered off to my room, putting the disc into the console. I remember very vaguely the silence of the game booting up, the loading bar, and then BAM! The game roared to life as if it immediately presented its style to me, presenting how damn cool it was. Everything from its style to the anarchy of the gameplay and how it challenged me in a way I'd never been able to experience before. I fell in love. And over the course of the next 3 or so years, I'd snag copies of the first TimeSplitters game and the third game. I was deeply smitten with what these games were, and they deeply inspired me as a result. I remember actually picking up a pencil, trying to emulate how good my sisters were at art at the time, trying to draw the TimeSplitters characters. Hell, I remember being a small kid, trying to get some of my friends in primary school to play the game with me, even gifting my then best friend a copy of the game that my dad had found going for spare, for cheap. I wanted people to see how much I loved these games. I wanted to share that with the entire world. These games became a way for me to enjoy my weekends, with Fridays becoming TimeSplitters Fridays, becoming the day I'd play the games way past my bedtime, the hum of the CRT I had cutting through the silence, and my fingers getting sore after 7 hours of non-stop playing. After I had completed everything that the third game, TimeSplitters Future Perfect, had to offer, I wondered about the series, how it would keep going from there. With each game, even back then as a dumb little kid, I had noticed how different the 3 games were. So in a pre-internet age, I, overeager and deeply infatuated with the series, put TimeSplitters 4 on my Christmas list in what must have been 2011, I think? I'd done so after a visit to my grandma sometime within that year. An older sibling had shown me a trailer, quote-unquote, of TimeSplitters 4, only validating that the game was clearly real and that I deeply wanted it. For those of you who know, this is probably very funny to you. To those who don't know, why is this funny? Because TimeSplitters 4 was never a released game. Something said sibling probably didn't realise when they showed off that stupid teaser trailer that spread around the internet back in the day. But in an age of my life where I had virtually no internet access, and I didn't have the means to dig into the series like I later would, TimeSplitters 4 was the thing that I desperately wanted the most, the holy grail of my life. So Christmas Day came, and I got Metal Gear Solid 2. But you know what? I'm glad I asked for TimeSplitters 4, because if I hadn't, I wouldn't have gotten Metal Gear Solid 2. And that's also a really good game. Funny how things turn out. But TimeSplitters 4 subsequently became an enigma for me. I hadn't got it for Christmas, but I had an equally great game nonetheless, so I wasn't too mithered, I wasn't too bothered. But what happened? Where was TimeSplitters 4? It clearly existed, I must have thought back then. So where the hell was it? Eventually I would get access to the internet on a more prominent basis around 2012, 2013 or so, and I would learn the fate of the game that had become almost mythical to me. It turns out that TimeSplitters 4 was in development, but both it and Free Radical Design met their untimely end in 2008. TimeSplitters 4 had been conceptual, in development, a demo presented to various publishers, but no dice, they just wouldn't fund it. And Free Radical went defunct in December of 2008, just a year before I'd be introduced to the series. I was devastated hearing that news, actually. It had been legitimately one of the only times up until that point that a game series ending hurt me deeply in that regard. Keep in mind I was still a young kid, but like a lot of people, I didn't give up, and I would time to time search the news on Google for anything that could indicate the series was still alive in some way. And that's when I found out about Savatyearly's statement regarding the series. I remember at the time how bitter I felt at this comment. It felt to me back then so dismissive, so reductive of the things that made the series what it was. Why were people so allergic to something with style, something fun and cool? In retrospect, thinking on it now with the perspective that I have in the good old year of 2025, I can in fact understand what Savatyearly meant by this. I can understand the perspective of being someone who has to make serious business decisions within an industry like this that seemed less receptive to games like TimeSplitters, games that have been outmoded for the longest of times. But to me back then, to someone back in 2012 who had been going through a lot behind the scenes, this felt like a stab in the heart. It felt like something dear to me was being betrayed. But I wouldn't feel sad for long. That's when I discovered 100,000 strong for TimeSplitters 4. Man, I don't actually remember specifically when I discovered the page, probably sometime in, I want to say August of 2012. I don't know, but I remember feeling so hopeful for what it was trying to achieve, and it felt validating. I'd grown up at that point feeling so alone in loving these games, trying to make connections with others through them. I wanted people to see what I saw, to share the feelings I felt. I wanted to feel, as a shy, reclusive human being, teenager, validated for once for the things that I loved. And the Facebook page was where I first felt that I wasn't alone for the first time in that regard. I remember being somewhat peer pressured in high school to get a Facebook account. Yes, believe it or not, getting a Facebook account back then meant you were cool. Oh, how times have changed. But truthfully, I didn't get why people were so obsessed with social media, but whatever, I got it anyway. And I'm glad I did, as I'd follow the Facebook page and keep up with its updates. Around the same time, I came across the trailer for the Unreal Tournament 2004 TimeSplitters mod. I remember how I felt seeing this trailer for the mod, actually. It felt like these characters that I'd grown up with had another chance to see some sunlight again, that even with it being within a game I didn't understand, TimeSplitters was alive in some way. And that's the last I'd really hear about it, as with my limited skills in searching for things at the time and my unfamiliarity with the internet, I didn't even know that it had been sent a cease and desist. Yeah, the TimeSplitters mod for Unreal 2004 shut down, basically. But in its place, TimeSplitters Rewind began. I don't recall the exact day that I found out about Rewind, but when I did, I remember obsessively reading over the coverage, looking at any and all articles I could, constantly searching on YouTube for anything I could of the project. It was a mystery to me how this project just spawned in, cropped up into existence one day. But I remember telling my sisters about it and telling everyone else that I could as well. Of course, most people didn't exactly understand, but they were happy for me. And from here, I followed the project in the shadows, always from a distance. I felt too shy to engage and interact with the community that had cropped up around 100,000 strong for TimeSplitters 4, and when the page was transformed into the page that focuses now on TimeSplitters Rewind, I felt even more shy as a result. While the petition to get those 100,000 people for TimeSplitters 4 hadn't fully gotten to its goal, it's almost like by existing it had reached something greater. And to be honest, from 2013 to 2014, even 2015 in a way, Rewind kept me hopeful through some of the roughest years of my life. A lot of my life around this point had become more complicated, with the stress of high school and an ever-increasing stressful life at home with family and whatever the hell had been going on there being, to be frank, absolutely soul-crushing. But it was the games that I played and the things that inspired me, the things that I was hopeful for, that kept me going, kept telling me you've got cool things to live for in that regard. A lot of the time in 2013 to 2015 was spent following the snippets of the project in development. The little things. So, to start with, there were a few names connected to Rewind back then that often showed off footage of maps in development. So for example, back then, footage of the training ground map in CryEngine circulated, which became one of the defining visuals associated with this era of the project. Training Ground, for context for anyone who isn't a TimeSplitters fan, was a map that was originally introduced within TimeSplitters 2. It's a major fan favourite. It's basically a military base in what appears to be a cavern, and there's a mode in the original game called Assault, where you've got to essentially do a load of objectives, like destroy a bunch of barrels, destroy a bunch of computers, but essentially it's team versus team. You're either defenders or you're either the attackers, and I'm gonna be honest, Training Ground became kind of famous in the TimeSplitters fandom, the community, for being a genuinely fun map. honestly. So to see it remade in this gorgeous new style was, to me at the time, awe-inspiring, and a lot of other people felt the same. I remember the comments being flooded with support and interest in the project on the uploads of the footage. These videos were the public face of the game at the time. Other than this footage, another one of the big names to do with Rewind was a man by the name of Michael Hubica, who, thanks to his honestly energetic and infectiously positive personality, kept not only Rewind in the public spotlight for much longer than it really could have had, but his way of doing things had a lot of ambition concerning what he wanted when it came to the way that the project would go. A lot of that, however, did lead to a few claims which would be kind of unfeasible, even in retrospect, like the game being on the PS4, which was new at the time, or coming to the Wii U potentially. It was good publicity, but not for the greatest of reasons. Though something I've come to understand about Hubica in that regard is that he mainly wanted to get the project out there to get the support that was so desperately needed, so with the more bold claims, he meant well. Something I remember quite well, and something that also seems to have fallen into the cracks of time, is the fact that there were a few live streams, if I recall, of Hubica actually working on the build of TimeSplitters Rewind that existed at the time, but the footage seems to be either incredibly rare, or it's lost nowadays. But it's kind of funny to think that I was there for the stream at the time, when he was streaming the game off to an audience. It's funny being at the centre of something that's now lost media. I remember, too, skulking around on the website at the time, a lot, constantly checking in each week for any new updates that came from the project, as I desperately wanted to see more of the project in action. Nowadays, and since at least the late 2010s, the original site has been primarily defunct, but I remember that it felt so magical just to see something like this in action. In retrospect, there is a certain palpable irony to the fact that this game's website got lost to time, kind of like the websites the original games had, but hey, we have the modern site, so that's that. We can't cry over spilt milk. I can vaguely recall, using my PS3's internet browser to access the site, trying to dig deeper into it, see what other updates existed. I have to give credit to Rewind in general back then. It helped plant the seed for the investigative edge I have to researching topics for videos like this, like the ones that you're watching now, as it made me a lot more internet literate in the process. And one thing that I especially remember, oh god, is the hype around the winter of 2014 release date, which never happened. I recall my confusion around what happened to the game to not come out during that time, but in retrospect, knowing the history of the game and knowing how things were behind the scenes, the developers were struggling throughout this time, and I have sympathy as a result. Beyond 2015, the memories I have of the project are a little easier to recall. I'd still follow the project across the years, always wondering what happened with that 2014 release date. As my life became more complicated, from time to time I'd come back to the project, just seeing what was going on. I was always curious. 2016 to 2017 would be a quiet period for me in terms of Rewind. I had forgotten, admittedly, about the project, but not because I wanted to. In the final quarter of 2016 to the first month of 2017, myself and my family ended up technically homeless for some time, in which we were placed within a homeless unit for our own safety. A lot of my time back then was spent trying to cope with the situation, trying to get through high school and figuring out my future, as to be open here, I'd given up on the idea of even having one, due to how depressing the entire situation was, but naturally I had to keep going. Fortunately, this period wouldn't last for long, as eventually things settled back to a level of normality. However, being online again after being off it for close to 5 months, 6 even, took some time to get used to. And it would be during this period of my life in which my online life was primarily accessed through a Kindle Fire tablet, and later on a laptop of my very own. And that would be the place, the particular piece of technology, in which I would make a Discord account for the first time, the one that I still use to this day, and the very first server I joined was a place that might be familiar to a few of you in the TimeSplitters community. For people who aren't though, it was TimeSplitters Online. TimeSplitters Online, in summary, is a Discord server dedicated to folks who want to play TimeSplitters 2 and TimeSplitters Future Perfect together, online together. Usually in competitive-esque online matches, but while I became intertwined with that server's history, it would be on October 5th, 2018, in which I would join the TimeSplitters Rewind Discord server. I'm not sure why I didn't join quicker than this. I'm not sure why it took me so long. I do recall that I felt nervous potentially coming here, as in a way I was meeting my heroes in that regard. I was, in fact, being a bit of a cornball, but it is what it is. It was around this time that I became more and more invested within Rewind as a project, after so long, being so close to it and seeing it up front that I'd found myself interested in how things had changed so much. With how long that at that point the game had been in development for, I was genuinely intrigued by what exactly had held the project up for so long. Around the same time, I decided to open up a YouTube channel, with my first videos being about TimeSplitters. It's funny, really, that Rewind even has a hand in my decision to make a channel. See, from the earliest point that I had been watching folks like the Angry Video Game Nerd and the Nostalgia Critic, I felt inspired to open up a channel of my own in September of 2018. Originally, the intention was to be another game reviewer, what I wanted to do on YouTube, but ultimately that never came to be. However, when I realised that I had a lot of spare time on my hands in 2018, I thought to myself, hey, what's the harm in doing this? Making a channel of my own. And thus, the channel that you're watching this video on was born. For some time, my YouTube channel remained a place primarily for TimeSplitters content, with my intent behind this decision being to try and give more visibility to the TimeSplitters Online community, the general TimeSplitters community, and to document the various online matches I'd had in the TimeSplitters Online Discord. I also had a penchant for trying to archive and document everything that I did back in the day, as by that point I'd started to become aware of the fragility of uploading anything onto sites. Years of watching YouTubers fight against lunatics in copyright battles had made me naturally quite cautious, even if I knew that what I was outputting wouldn't really find the same kind of problems. Alas. But about the videos I made for TimeSplitters Online, I get quite nostalgic thinking about these. And it's genuinely sweet in that I still speak to a lot of the folks that I played with back then. I made some real friends from those gaming sessions, people that I really enjoy talking to, and I remember them making a lot of the lonelier nights for me more comfortable. Hell, I remember that I bought myself a PS2 network adapter, I think on my birthday in 2018 actually, just to be able to play those matches. Memories. But nothing stays the same for long. Around the end of 2018, I had began discussions with an individual by the name of Fowls, also known as Sandwave. They had been interested within creating a documentary for the series, for the games, trying to process the information they had wanted to express out to the general masses. Willing to assist, I suggested myself as someone who could produce such a video, to which they agreed, leading to the pair of us exchanging as much information as possible regarding the games. Alongside this, my interest in Rewind only intensified further, and my presence within the Discord server began to grow, and it would be around the end of March 2019 that I would get the chance to talk to one of the people that I had followed for years in regards to the project, a name that I've already mentioned already, Michael Hubica. I don't actually recall too much of the prior context to this particular interview, but around this time, progress on documenting the information that I had been digging up for concerning the 3 games and the documentary through the help of Fowls, is pretty great digging themselves, had been going quite well. However, I wanted to also document Rewind too, as from a personal perspective, the project and the state it was in back then had perplexed me. Why had it taken so long? What caused it to take so long? There must be a reason why. Everything has to have a reason. Such questions piqued my interest, and from there I decided to dig around, ask people involved within the project, and I learned that Hubica, after everything, was still here. To be honest, this was quite the watershed moment for me. Forgive me for being corny, but Hubica to me was quite the personal hero back in the early 2010s. This was one of the people who had been trying to resurrect TimeSplitters to me, keep the series alive, get the series out there, a series that I deeply loved, and I wanted to ask him a lot of questions regarding development of, particularly when it came to Rewind. I do chuckle at this interview nowadays, actually, because I was so nervous and quiet when it came to trying to speak to someone I had tons of respect for, and someone that I had been dying to speak to for literally 6 years up until that point. I met one of my heroes. It inspired me. I still recommend watching this interview, quote unquote, to be honest, as it's a bit of a time capsule into how things were at the time, but talking to Hubika only made me more eager to dig deeper into what exactly had been going on with Rewind with this project. Rewind was something that I still believed in, still looked at, kept up with for updates on, but the allure of its mystery as to what the hell had been going on behind the scenes was tantalizing to me. I've always been someone that generally can't help but look into weird rabbit holes concerning media platformed on the internet or close to it in proximity. There's something about it that engages me on a whole other level than most other things. So Hubika was the tip of the iceberg for me. I wanted to swim deeper than that. In early 2019, I dreamed up a concept for my channel, a series of videos in which I speak about obscurities, oddities, mysteries. I'd always had a bit of a penchant for this stuff, as I've already mentioned, this habit of wanting to dig deeper into things I didn't understand, that I wanted to understand, that captured my attention. In a different time, I'd probably have been a decent journalist, not the Kotaku kind, but I felt the itch to not only try something new, but also to evolve my channel and give myself an outlet to discuss these sort of things that had been on the brain. CRT Dreams was born, and ensuingly, Patchblob, my avatar. It's funny how, from this decision, I became the artist that I am today, because if I'd never came up with the concept of CRT Dreams, and making what is essentially video essays about things that I find personally interesting, then Patchblob would have never been born, which means I would have never kept going with the art that I make. It's interesting how such a decision to make CRT Dreams, in part thanks to Rewind in a way, has had such a huge butterfly effect on my life. But I digress. And with the birth of CRT Dreams and Patchblob, with the evolution of both my art and my channel, as my focus shifted away from uploading footage of my TimeSplitters online matches, and I found something that I was more passionate about, in that time, I realised I could use CRT Dreams to make the documentaries on the TimeSplitters games, and Rewind. I'd be able to fulfill my word to Fowls and help platform more of the history that deserves to be seen, get it out to greater masses. And across the majority of 2019, making those videos became my focus. My objectives for these videos were simple, really. I wanted to platform the information that had been vetted by both Fowls and myself. I wanted to give clarity on how genuinely mysterious the development of the TimeSplitters games were. I wanted to provide some kind of closure to why Free Radical shut down to begin with and what happened after. And I also wanted to document what created Rewind in the first place, as at that time I genuinely did not know. Making these documentaries due to the sheer volume of information that had to be processed was a sobering experience. And while I got through documenting the original 3 games, even TimeSplitters 4 and the circumstances surrounding its untimely collapse, Rewind was a challenge. Not in a bad way, but due to how legitimately interesting its history was, because behind the scenes, a lot had happened across the years, which nobody in the general public had been virtually aware of. The general public was none the wiser to what was happening behind the scenes. Rewind's history was virtually an enigma to the masses, and as I dug into Rewind and acquired the information with not only permission to handle it, but also applying it into the video and censoring it with as much tact as possible, I realised that Rewind needed to have its story told. I would suggest legitimately watching the third part of the TimeSplitters and Free Radical documentary I made years ago to get the full details, but to be brief on a few of the points, constant engine troubles due to the fact that every CryEngine update made all developed work completely invalid and incompatible with the current updates to the engine, switching engines due to frustrations with CryEngine, which Crytek was fine with, only for them to renege on their word to the team later. A lot of the people developing the game were volunteers who were hammered with their own lives and jobs, and did this because they loved what the game could be and wanted it to be real, and Crytek getting angry over a public display of frustration on the Facebook page. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. The thing is, with getting a lot of this information from anonymous sources and getting access to behind the scenes files, which I was able to vet and ensure that they were real, it humbled me, really. I still held this incredibly fucking stupid mentality at the time about the way that games were made, not realizing that there was a lot of human cost behind it, that people genuinely had to knuckle down and try and handle increasingly stressful situations behind the scenes. Development stopping and starting, losing developers, so on and so forth. With digging into Free Radical for the other parts of the documentary, I had come to see that the people that created the games I love were not only victims of an incredibly vicious industry, but they also weren't perfect people either. Things were never black and white as I had thought. There was an entire other side to all of this that I had never seen before, and it was eye-opening. Creating the documentaries had made me realise that for both Free Radical and the Rewind team, a lot of how I perceived things was so binary, and it made me realise that while I still love Free Radical for what they had created, I respected the Rewind team deeply for still developing the game and continuing to try when, be it by the hands of others or their own shortcomings for a fan project that had the heart and weight of an entire fan community behind it, the developers and the people making it were bogged down by stress and problems constantly. And yet, they still continued. They kept going, despite everything. By wanting to understand the project, I got a chance to understand the people and what exactly had been happening behind closed doors. And I couldn't help but feel sympathy for the fact that they were trying so damn goddamn hard every time. Clarity had been provided to me for the past near 10 years on why Rewind hadn't come out yet, because the team had tried, but curveball after curveball batted away progress each and every single time. Looking back at these documentaries, the third part in particular is relevant to Rewind here. Oh boy, it's definitely aged. I mean, wow, that audio quality. It sounds like I'm talking underwater.
Married, thus he would not have been able to keep full control of the project any longer due to...
Jesus, but it still holds up in terms of its history. So if you're genuinely interested in Rewind's history, which I hope you are, check this and the new website's about page out. All of this had fueled my penchant for wanting to dig deeper into mysteries, and with the fact that I was continuing to evolve and improve CRT dreams over the years to create what could class reasonably as video essays, I wanted to provide future video topics this level of care and tact. And my presence within the TimeSplitters Rewind Discord would only grow from there, as really I wanted to support the project in any way I could. Digging into its history had been eye-opening for me. More updates would come across the years, and I'd see the community react accordingly. Be it from the documentaries or the passage of time, a lot of the sentiment towards Rewind became significantly more understanding. I'm unsure of exactly when, but I also became a mod of their Discord server, helping to maintain the peace around the place and providing a lot of support to the people who kept the Discord going. It felt flattering to be able to provide some of my spare time to a project that I genuinely cared about, you know, even if it was for something small. And I felt it was on me, my right, to try and clear up any misinformation that came from the years of silence when it came to the project, given that I had dug into the game's past and all. And the extent of my help would increase, as in 2022, I actually became a QA tester for the game. Being a tester has been an interesting experience. For one, I've sort of been on and off with it. The years surrounding my life from 2020 to now have been complicated, to say the least. I began my time within university during the first year of the COVID-19 pandemic, watching from then to 2023 as the course I was on only got worse and worse from the fact that nobody in charge actually adapted to the fact that there was a fucking pandemic going on, and the fact that my tutors didn't care about the individual interests of the people on board said course. During all of this, I went through an incredibly stressful home move into a flat near my childhood home, which was stressful for a whole other smorgasbord of reasons, and then taking a master's degree over the 2023-2024 period to try and get any semblance of experience in when it comes to the subject I was trying to get a degree in. Fucking hell, God, it's a lot. But I recall playing QA builds of the game, participating in a few matches, playing the game in private, seeing the latest version of the game that had been worked on behind the scenes, watching as I saw this game that had been such an enigma to me in its development all the way back in the early 2010s blossom into something amazing. And I was able to see it up close and see the hard work of the people who really just wanted to make it real after so long. Seeing their efforts up close and seeing the game change and evolve as a result was amazing to me, to be frank. Honestly, and I won't say too much for privacy reasons, you can really tell that the team had found their footing at this point, that there were no more random sudden engine switch-ups, that they were trying to refine what they had, work on it, make it damn cool. And this is something that I can say for sure. Rewind has a feel of its own, from experience. It feels like a game of its own, not an imitation of the games that it's remaking in a sense, and the music. I just want to briefly say, the music is fucking fantastic. Rewind has its own identity, I feel, and I genuinely cannot wait to see it release, because I wanted to see others react the way that I did in that regard when I first played the QA builds years back. I have a lot of fond memories of the past few years in particular when it comes to Rewind. They help kind of apply a better taste in my mouth when it comes to thinking back to my university days, especially as I just went on a whole rant about how bad they were. But no, in all seriousness, I remember a few times either being on the computers within the campus or elsewhere, feverishly watching Rewind's latest updates, seeing the community react live. It brought back that feeling that I first felt with 100,000 Strong for TimeSplitters 4, how I wasn't so alone anymore when it came to how deeply these games were loved, that there were thousands, hundreds of thousands out there who loved these games all the same. I have other memories too, of waiting for my train using my mobile data to view the live stream of the latest update at the time, getting on the train when it was near pitch black outside, just watching the update as I travelled home. That feeling of huddling up next to the train's heater, headphones snug on my head, blotting out how overstimulating the rest of the world was. Seeing progress on the game I was still here for after all this time, and genuinely being in awe of how far things had come, how much progress had been made. It's funny how, even for the little things, Rewind was there in the end. And that's kind of my journey with how I got to this point, my personal history with why this game means a lot to me and how I got to the point that I'm here now in that regard. That's my journey with Rewind, my story on how I ended up from the games in my childhood to being where I am now with not only the project, but even just being a small part of something that means a lot to me. I had never really expected to ever come this far, to end up at this point. I could have never possibly predicted just how far I'd come because of this series, and to be able to catch up on a fan project that in some of the darkest times of my life had been a light in the dark that kept me wanting to catch it, to keep going and see what the future holds, it means a lot to me. Rewind means so much to me for so many damn reasons. Rewind legitimately is an inspiration to me. I know that might sound really corny, but I credit it a lot with where I am today. From being the little kid who played the TimeSplitters games, finding comfort in them as the outside world at the time could be really complicated and scary, holding on to them while my life rapidly changed in the early 2010s, to digging into the series' history later and then Rewind later in the decade, and the glimmer of hope that this project was for me, becoming closer and closer to it until I became, in a small way, a part of it, it's led me very, very far, but it also did a lot for me in inspiring me in a lot of other ways. Rewind itself was inspired and fueled by the creativity of the TimeSplitters fans who wanted to resurrect, respect, the games that meant something to them, to take Sevat Yerli's comments and turn them into something beautiful and tangible, proof that his words were wrong. They wanted to create a visible mark of their own existence through their artistry, to broadcast the message clear to the entire world, that TimeSplitters mattered, that their artistry in paying respects to the series mattered. But their artistry inspired me as an artist too. Games like TimeSplitters, which led to Rewind, fueled me enough to not only want to pay respects to their development through projects like the documentaries, but also the development of things like CRT Dreams, which continues to this day with the video you're watching right now. On a personal level, Rewind inspired me as a human being to keep going too. I've mentioned during the personal story before, but the hopes that Rewind had as a project and what it aimed to achieve kept me hopeful during some of the most stressful, darkest times of my life. It kept me hopeful through my rough teenage years, through literal homelessness, COVID, so many instances within my life where I needed something to look forward to tell me to keep going, to encourage me to do so. Tell myself that it was still worth it to keep going despite everything difficult ahead. Mind, I'm not saying that I wanted to give up on life because I didn't have Rewind. That'd be a bit ridiculous, but what I'm trying to convey is that it helped soothe the pain of living through some really, really rough times, and it helped me keep optimistic during all of them. And the more I grew up, the more I changed. I was no longer the hopeful kid, amazed and looking from the shadows towards the project. I was an adult, a person, someone who gained access to the full story of Rewind's entire development, the level of chaos plaguing the team at every step, and their genuinely commendable and astonishing effort to push through all of that to create something genuinely amazing in the end. Something amazing that's going to be released soon. To clarify, this doesn't mean that I think that Rewind is immune to criticism. After all, with how long it's taken, there's bound to be some legitimate criticism. I can completely understand that, and people are honestly allowed to have their particular thoughts about the project. But for me, I've come to understand the project in a way that I've always really wanted to. I've always wanted to know why things were the way they were. Learn about the people who genuinely kept the project alive and developed it, why certain things happened. I wanted to see Rewind for its components and understand what was going on, and through doing that, I became a part of the project in a tiny way in the end. I feel content. Rewind became something that I went from following, chasing the coattails of and becoming more internet literate from, to trying to follow what happened to it, and then joining the server, digging into its history, fueling the interest I had in digging into obscurities and mysteries. Rewind's long years turned me from a fan into a sleuth with a taste for mysteries, trying to find out more about the things that didn't make sense to me while trying to clarify on things that needed it the most. I became someone who did all I could to support the project, leading me to becoming a mod, then a tester, and someone who's in the game's credits. Man, I've come a long way, but so has the game. In terms of the future, what's ahead for TimeSplitters Rewind? I can't say, nor can I define it. I don't know, personally. But I will be here because I feel content. Like closure, in a way. A part of not only my life, but a lot of people's lives is coming to a close, and a new future begins from here. And I'll be playing Rewind. 12 years onward, I'm so glad I'm still here.